Episode 2 of the Builder's Toolkit series. We're going to take a journey into prompt engineering. So let's jump in and see what we're going to explore. We're going to start with an introduction to generative AI, large language models, and see what prompts really are before jumping in to explore the structure of prompts themselves. Then we'll get into some best practices around leveraging different training approaches for working with prompts and large language models in prompt engineering. Then we'll be able to start scaling things out by getting into prompt reuse and then exploring template libraries. And then we'll start into automation techniques around something called prompt chaining that will then allow us to utilize some different toolkits, specifically LangChain, and we'll see how we can use those in Domino. Finally, we'll round it out with some risks and challenges that you need to be aware of in prompt engineering. Lastly, we'll have a question and answer session. Let's talk a little bit about Domino. Domino allows you to build, deploy, and manage AI with its unified platform. You can access data, tools, compute, models, and projects across any environment. You can foster collaboration, establish best practices, and track models in production to accelerate and scale AI while ensuring governance and reducing costs. So now let's explore generative AI, language models, transformers, and prompts. So what is generative AI? Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can generate content, text or images, code, music, and other forms of media that can mimic human-like creativity. So these models that can generate content, you have things like ChatGPT, you have text from the API, GPT-3 or GPT 3.5 or 4. So write a tagline for a bookstore. The Book Nuke, reading is key to imagination as a response. So we have a table listing there in SQL, and the task is create a SQL query for all customers in Texas named Jane. Select star from customers where first name equal Jane and state equal Texas. We can also do things like images. Prompt is a super lazy panda on a sofa in the style of Van Gogh. So now let's talk about prompts. We've got these amazing models, but we need to be able to give it input to guide what we're getting back. And those prompts can vary in complexity from a phrase to a sentence to multiple paragraphs. And the reason that we have to do prompt engineering, if we put in something it doesn't quite understand, it will bring back information very confidently, but very wrong. So it's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So what is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering focuses on using tried and true approaches to craft effective inputs that give us back the response that we want. They'll generate the content that we need. And this is a very iterative and verified process. And so we use a lot of experimentation and then look at the model capabilities to make that happen. And I can't stress enough that we always want to validate the model response. So now let's dive into the structure of prompts. First thing we need to do as we're looking at prompt structure is focus on a couple of best practices. First, we want to use delimiters, because that will tell the model things that are important and give it context. We can also split our prompt into input and output sections. We also want to focus on being clear and concise. Now, that doesn't mean short. What that means is it gives the right amount of clarity and context to be able to get the information back that we want from the model itself. So as you can see, it's really more art than science. So the reason we use delimiters for hints is because we want to really give as much context as we can with the prompt to the model. Now, if you're familiar with Markdown, that works really well. You can also use tags, you can use curly braces, you can use quotes, you can use single quotes, as long as you're consistent with that. And again, it provides that clarity and that context that we need. And then, as you can see in this example, we have a context marker there using a pound sign, and we have a text marker for a delimiter that shows the text that we're using. Then we also have the task that we're using where we're summarizing text, and you can see that text is in curly braces. It can figure out through the context that this is the text that we're going to summarize. So let's take a look at that. So here we are in ChatGPT, and I'm going to take that example with our delimiter and paste it in here. And I'll hit enter to send the message, and we can see that it's summarized the text. We could also make that summary into bullet points. And notice it knew what that was based on the context. Another thing we should consider as a best practice as we're looking at the prompt structure is how to structure the input and the output. So let's take a moment and think about that. So as we're thinking about the structure of the prompt, it's important to give as much context and split things up in the input to make sure the model understands exactly what our intent is. So we start with the role. Instead of being a generalist, we may want to use a domain expert, a data scientist, a marketer, to act as that expert in a specific area. You can also tell it where our data is. That can take the form of just text or maybe some CSV lines, raw data, an excerpt from an article, a draft, something like that. And then we say, this is the task I want you to perform. And we can give it some instructions, like you want it to consider. Critique yourself as a colleague and suggest improvements. If you don't have an answer, say, I don't know. Conversely, on the output, we also want to focus on that structure and tell it what format we'd like. Do we want it as HTML? Do we want it as JSON, Markdown? Do we want it in a table, a list, a paragraph? Do we want it step by step? Who is the audience that we want to present to or we want this content for? Executives, data scientists, educators, 5-year-olds? Explain it to me like I'm 5. We also can include examples to train it and say, these are some other related things that will help you get the context that you need to give me the output that I want. You can also tell it rankings or ratings, like order or score or percentage, alphabetical, rank by stars, whatever you want to do there. So that's a little bit about the output. Let's take a look at that. So here we are back in ChatGPT. We've got an example that shows a lot of the input and output context that we can give the model to get more accurate information. In this case, we've got a role, act as movie historian. Our task is whenever I ask a question about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, suggest a better version of the question and about that aspect of the MCU. So my role is act as a model historian. The task is whenever I ask a question about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, suggest a better version of the question about that aspect of the MCU. We also have an instruction. Ask me for the first question to refine. ChatGPT said, please provide the first question about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that you would like refined. So I'll say, how many nicknames has Tony Stark given other people? It says a more specific version of the question could be, can you provide a list of the nicknames Tony Stark uses for other characters in the Iron Man and Avengers films within the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So it's coming up with a list of nicknames for Tony Stark. That Tony Stark, I should say, has used in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Point Break is Thor, Legolas for Hawkeye, Loki is Reindeer Games, Spider-Man Underoos, Bruce Banner the Big Guy, and Rocket Raccoon is Build-A-Bear, and Ebony Maw is Squidward. And those are a few examples. So we've seen some more interesting examples that the model can do, including improving what we've put in to get better output. Now that we've focused on the structure and seen a couple of examples, it's time to look at some best practices and dig a little deeper into some tips for prompt engineering. So we always want to start with a clear goal in mind. As we've seen, we have some tricks we've already learned to be specific and provide context. And as always, we want to iterate and experiment, and then we can also test with different models because different prompts can behave differently in different models. Let's see some specific examples of this in ChatGPT. So we're back in ChatGPT to talk about our prompt engineering best practices. And so the first step of that is to start with a clear goal. In our case, we're going to pick a prompt to generate an email to request a meeting. So let's do that right now. So it's creating a sample email template for requesting a meeting that we can customize according to our specific needs. And notice they're already templatizing this. And it's giving us some information there. So it created this nice email, but it's pretty generic. And so we're starting with a clear goal. Is it really clear? Goal is to generate an email to request a meeting. But we want to be more specific and provide context, which is best practice number 2. And so we're going to expand that prompt to say, write an email to request a follow-up meeting with a prospective customer. So we're giving it an audience, and we're giving it more specific prompt. So now it's changed the subject, follow-up meeting request, exploring opportunities, hope it finds you well, etc., etc. Even gives us a call to action there. So now we can iterate a little bit more. And let's give it a little bit more tone, a different tone. And we'll say writing engagement. Now let's give it a different tone as we're iterating and experimenting on it to write an engaging email with a clear call to action for next week. So let's see what that does. So it's a little more direct. A conversation next week. Hope you're having a fantastic week. So much more we can explore together. How does your calendar look next week? I'm eager to slot in a time that works best for you. I'm sold. Thank you for considering this. So we iterate an experiment on there. And we could test this in a different model to see the outcome. And we can do that actually real quickly with a different model. Grab that first one. Copy. Go up here for a new chat, and we'll go to ChatGPT 3.5. So we have details for the proposed meeting. Let's see what this one looks like to start with. It's actually 3.5 is a little more detailed. So now let's do our specific follow-up meeting with a prospective customer just to see what the difference is there. It's a little bit more detailed as well. And now let's try it with the iterating and experimenting with our engaging email with a call to action for a call next week. So it has some clear steps in the meeting, a few time slots, and inserting a link for the call. Let's quickly switch back over to 4. And it's way more concise. It's a little more engaging, less detail. So there we go. Just to recap, the best practices for prompt engineering are start with a clear goal. We did that. We provided some more context. Instead of just scheduling a meeting or requesting a meeting, changed it up with a follow-up meeting to a prospective customer. and then iterated on that with an engaging email with a call to action for a call next week, and tested it on GPT-4 and GPT-3.5 and saw a little bit of variance there. And so there are some common use cases that prompt engineering can really help us with, such as text summarization, transforming from one to another, like translating into French or something like that, answering questions about our data, maybe it's documents, it's an article, what have you, or like role playing, where you have hard questions you're trying to maybe answer from a prospect and you can have it role play the prospect, and then also as a sales coach to see how you did. I've even played with it and created a Zork terminal. People have created Linux terminals, all sorts of things you can role play with. There are examples of code generation, specific models that you can do that with, and different assistants that will help you with that, like GitHub Copilot or Jupyter AI. And we'll see an example of that coming up. Finally, mathematical reasoning, where it's walking through and thinking through strategies of how to come up with the right answer. It's important to remember that we always have to verify whatever's coming back from the model, because when they're wrong, they're very confident, but they're usually spectacularly wrong. But fortunately, there are some strategies that can really help us with this. The first one of these is called zero-shot learning. And really it refers to the model's ability to complete a task without ever having seen examples of that task before. And it relies on context and pre-existing knowledge to understand and respond to the prompt. So let's take a look at the rest of the strategies along with zero-shot learning so you can get a better understanding of the process and how it unfolds. In this example, we've switched from ChatGPT to a Jupyter notebook that's running in our Domino environment. We're going to use the GPT API to answer some of the questions that we have, or just get back the content based on our prompt. So we're going to go ahead and load up our libraries and get our API key going. And then we're going to do zero shot. Now, zero shot is a learning strategy where the model hasn't seen any examples of the task it's supposed to complete. So let's see how it does here. It says, translate the following text to French. Hello, how are you? And it translated that to French. So then we have few shot, which now gives examples, or what we call exemplars, to the model so that it has a context for completing that with those examples. And as you see, the first example translates into German with the answer. The second example translates into Italian with the answer. And the third example just says, translate, I would like a coffee to Spanish. And so it has some of those examples. Let's see what it does. And it translates that to Spanish. The next learning strategy, or the last one we're really going to talk about right now, is called chain of thought. And this allows the model to have more processing steps in order to work through a more accurate answer, especially around complex mathematical problems. And the secret there is putting the phrase, let's think through this. It gives more processing steps for the model to figure it out. And so we're using examples here for each one of these and showing our work, much like we would have done in school, walking down through different problems till we get to the actual problem down below and see what the model answers. So we can see that it answers it. It says if we let B represent the number of marbles Bill has, then Rhonda has 2B marbles. We know that Rhonda has 12 more marbles than Daniel. So Daniel has 2B plus 12 or minus 12 marbles. Daniel has 6 more marbles than Bill. So 2B minus 12 equals B plus 6. Solving the equation for B, we get B equals 18. So Daniel has 2B minus 12. So Daniel has 24 marbles. The answer is Daniel has 24 marbles, which is the correct answer. So we've already seen text summarization. Here is question and answer, where we're taking in our prompt, our task, answer the question based on the context below. And our context is a short snippet of an article about the status of Pluto. And we're asking, what are the terrestrial planets? Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And if we scroll over here, we can see that the terrestrial planets are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. So it answered that from the question. Okay, let's switch back over to the slides. You may be thinking to yourself, well, gee, John, these examples are really cool, but they're really kind of one-offs or custom. And how do we start scaling those? Well, you're right where we should be. And understanding the need for prompt templates. And we want to be able to start scaling out our solutions. And so they're crucial to make sure that we're getting consistent result scenarios, but we can use them for a variety of different information with the same task. So like for customer service bots or content generation tasks. And so really, if we're doing that, we should see a reduction in response variability and an improvement in efficiency. So this is a prompt template example. And as you see that, we've got the role, act as an industry analyst, the task, analyze business and decision, and give me the potential benefits and drawbacks that would arise if the decision were implemented within the business. And an instruction, improve decision to solve all the drawbacks. So since this is templatized now, we could use it for an automotive business or a sales business or with a competitive decision or a strategic decision in a specific industry. So we're moving past that one-off solution into something that can be run over and over and automated. That brings us next to automation techniques with prompt chaining, where we can leverage those templates we just learned about. Prompt chaining is really powerful because it allows us to take large tasks and decompose them. And so the output, and this is the chain, the output of the current prompt becomes the input of the next prompt, and so on and so on and so on. So we can chain a lot of these together and create an automated demo, process, whatever we want. And so it's just taking that prompt engineering workflow that we've already talked about, where we have a goal, we're clear and concise, we iterate through and make sure we're getting what we want. And we do that with each one of those and decompose those down. So let's see an example of that now. And we're back in ChatGPT to take a look at prompt chaining. I've got a pretty massive prompt that I've created, iterating it and experimenting it over several iterations. So it's multi-role, and just like prompt chaining says, the output of the first prompt or the previous prompt is the input to the next prompt. So let's walk through this real quick. So I said act as an AI developer advocate as my first role and create a prompt engineering demo using prompt iteration for a high-end couch with at least 3 color and fabric choices. Emphasize the craftsmanship and beauty. The couch is made by the Super Lazy Panda Furniture Company. You may remember that Super Lazy Panda from one of our first slides, sitting on the couch, Van Gogh style. The Super Lazy Panda Furniture Company was created in 1925 and has the slogan, "Build the best for wonderful rest." And the company colors are a white background with orange vertical lines and blue text. Some instructions here use at least 6 iterations and include limits on text length and specific audience. Create the prompt goal and explain it. To start, act as the marketing person of the furniture company and create a product description with model numbers and technical information a furniture salesperson would need. So comment on the results and be critical, very important, and modify the prompt with any improvements from your critique comments. Then create a prompt to build a product information page and simulate the output as an AI model. Comment on the results and be critical and modify the prompt with any improvements for your critique comments. So I keep saying that just to make sure that it happens. Next, modify the prompt to limit the prompt to 100 characters. Comment on the results again, and then modify the prompt for a salesperson audience. Again, comment on the results and modify. And then finally, acting as a very experienced web developer, modify the results to output a 3-column bootstrap-ready, well-formed HTML page with the company name and slogan delimited by our delimiter here, prominently displayed at the top using CSS based on the company colors, and include a table of model numbers. After the product description, include the CSS link for the bootstrap in the head, and I've added that there. Include the script tag in the body, also bootstrap. Then allow me to download the HTML file and summarize what you did in the demo. So let's see how well it does, and we're doing this in ChatGPT 4. So we'll go ahead and do that. It may take a moment. So prompt engineering demo high-end couch by Super Lazy Panda Furniture Company. The prompt goal is to develop an engaging and informed product description for a high-end couch for the Super Lazy Panda Furniture Company, emphasizing craftsmanship, beauty, and fabric choices. The description is initially for marketing purposes, followed by adaptations for different purposes and audiences. The first iteration. First prompt, write a detailed product description for a high-end couch for the Super Lazy Panda Company. Fabric choices include model numbers, fabric choices, and it chose leather, velvet, and linen, and color options, black, white, and red. Highlight the craftsmanship and beauty along with the company's slogan, build the best for wonderful rest. Mention the company's branding colors. Result, Super Lazy Panda Furniture Company, since 1925, presents its exquisite range of high-end couches, epitomizing luxury and comfort. Put in a model number, available in premium leather, plush velvet, and eco-friendly linen. Offers versatile color choices of elegant black, pristine white, and vibrant red. Each couch is crafted with a meticulous attention to detail, ensuring unmatched beauty and durability. Our products resonate with our slogan, build the best for wonderful rest, while the design subtly incorporates our iconic branding colors. Comments, the description effectively covers all requested elements. However, it could be more concise and focus more on the unique selling points of each fabric type. Iteration 2, product information page. Modified prompt. Create a concise product information page for the SLPC 2023 couch. Focus on key features like the type of fabric, color choices, and the unique craftsmanship. Incorporate the company's heritage and slogan. Result, Super Lazy Panda SLPC 2023 couch. Fabrics, luxurious leather for durability, soft velvet for comfort, eco-friendly linen for sustainability. Colors, classic black, modern white, bold red. Craftsmanship. Each piece reflects our legacy since 1925 with exceptional craftsmanship, ensuring beauty and longevity. And the company's slogan, build the best for wonderful rest. Comments. This iteration is more focused and informative, suitable for a product page. However, it lacks specific details that might be crucial for potential buyers, like dimensions or care instructions. Iteration 3, 100 characters or less. Summarize the SPLC couch's key selling points in under 100 characters, focusing on luxury and comfort. Result, SPLC 2023, luxury leather, velvet linen couch, embodying comfort and elegance. This ultra-concise summary captures the essence of the product, but loses specific details like color options. It's more suited for taglines or social media posts. Iteration 4, salesperson audience. Describe SLPC couch for salespersons, focusing on features that would appeal to customers like comfort, fabric, quality, and design. Result, the SPLC couch, with its choice of high-quality leather, velvet, and linen, offers unparalleled comfort and style. Its robust construction ensures longevity, making it a valuable addition to any home. Sleek design and color options make it adaptable to various interior styles, a perfect seller point to diverse customer preferences. This version is more targeted towards sales. It could include more persuasive language or sales arguments. Bootstrap HTML page. Format the product description for the SPLC 2023 couch into a bootstrap-ready HTML page. Include company name, slogan, and a table of model numbers. Use the company color scheme. Result, there's the HTML page. We'll continue generating that. So that's a lot there for my 3-paragraph prompt. Created several artifacts. And so it's given me a summary of the demo, and I can see the HTML here. But I am going to say, create a download link. For the HTML page, because I don't like to cut and paste. And I also told it to do that. And ChatGPT now will download files for you. So it's analyzing, and it's analyzing some more. So we'll download the page. And there is our web page. It has the company colors of blue text, vertical orange, the couch, and model numbers of leather, with the fabric of leather, velvet, and linen in black, white, and red for each one of those choices. So there's an example of prompt chaining. And even though that was a manual prompt chain that I built, it is very illustrative of what you can actually do. And coming up, we'll see with LangChain, that framework that allows you to automate this and further templatize it, some additional scaling possible. So now we've progressed from just a custom one-shot or one-off prompt to something we could templatize and then create chains of prompts that we could use to do many different things. So now we can take that knowledge and use a framework and develop applications that are powered by large language models. The framework we're talking about here is called LangChain, and it really helps build LLM applications through what we call composability. And that's basically like Legos where we're putting things together. LangChain is composed of modules. We can take our prompts and we can templatize those. We can dynamically select those. We can manage the model inputs, as you can see there with our format. We can make calls to language models from almost any data source and utilize that information. And then we can also parse through. We can split that information out. We can transform it however we need to pass it where it needs to go for the next module. So we're going to take a look at a specific example of this called retrieval augmented generation, which allows us to query over a data store of documents, whatever we need to, and be able to chat with that or ask questions to get answers about that. I'm really excited to share with you the new AI Hub, which enables quickly building AI applications from pre-built solutions curated from the best of open source that are enterprise ready. The AI Hub enables you and your team to discover and reuse templates for several common ML use cases and industry-specific patterns, while providing access to best practices and the art of the possible inspiration with Domino. So let's see an example of a project template from the AI Hub, and then how we could use that with LangChain and talk to some private data. We're now running in Domino and we're on the projects page. We've got a templates tab here that takes us to the AI Hub. And as we can see here, we've got several different scenarios or use cases that we can utilize within AI Hub. I'm going to click on Generative AI and click on Enterprise QA over your docs. This is that process we talked about that's retrieval augmented generation. So we've got everything we need here, including the source code coming from the repo. So I'd click here to create project. And once the project is created, I can go into my workspace. And once the workspace is running, my project comes out of the box with a set of scripts, notebooks, and software packages pre-installed to give me everything I need to implement this technique called retrieval augmented generation. It would normally require several complex steps involving an ETL process to fetch and convert your internal documents. And actually, we have a diagram here. So to fetch your internal documents into embeddings into a vector store, and then implement a similarity search over those embeddings in the vector store, and then augmenting each chat with those search results without divulging your sensitive data. It comes set up with everything you need: pre-installed tools like LangChain, right-sized hardware, LLM access, and a vector store. So again, what we're going to be doing is working with our data store, using the large language models, the retriever. We'll ask the question, get the context, and then get the answer from our information, from our documents. So if we look at the Jupyter notebook that's been created, we can see that LangChain's here and that we can load our PDF file. In this case, it's for benefits. And then as we go down here, we can pick a sample page to run, and then it creates embeddings for our documents in our vector store. And then we can index those to be able to use those, and then finally run that and ask what the plan covers, and we can test it. And now that we're happy with how it works, my template also came pre-configured with with a chatbot Streamlit app that I can run right from Domino's app publishing service. Let's go take a look at that real quick. You go back over to Domino, click here on app, and then here, notice that all I need is that app shell file that gives me the information that I need. I'm going to click on view app and I'll ask it, what does my plan cover? So it's searching for the answer, and it's going to bring back the answer in context with the document. And it tells us about our Northwood Standard plan. Then we could communicate with it maybe as a customer service chatbot app, something like that. But the takeaway here is that we just saw this whole entire process run with LangChain using LLMs to communicate with our data. We've got a chatbot here that was instantly spun up with app service. So now let's switch back over to the slides and finish up. As we continue on our journey with prompt engineering, it's important to understand the risks and challenges. Citing sources is one of those things. They will make up sources. Also, making sure we understand when these models are being trained, where that information is coming from and who owns that. Also, there have been court cases about who can claim copyright over generated AI content. Also, you've got to really understand, like when you're working with ChatGPT and some of the other models, where that data is going that you're putting into the model. And you want to make sure that your data and other sensitive information is being protected. The models can have biases in them, so we want to make sure and watch for that. And when I talked about them being spectacularly wrong, the phrase that has been used is hallucination. Really, it's just the fact that they're trying to complete something and the percentage of what they're completing isn't very good. So they're just grabbing the next thing down the line. Because they're so good at English, they may not be, or language. They also the models have also been traditionally not very good at math. But the things that we saw, the zero shot, few shot, chain of thought, those sorts of strategies help the model have some time to work through answering those questions correctly. And then, of course, there are things around jailbreaking and prompt hacking and injection where people are inserting things into prompts and getting back sensitive information through the models. There are all sorts of things around that. So we want to make sure that we're being secure, and Domino helps us with all those different things. So speaking of Domino, as I talked about before, it's versatile enterprise-grade tools for not only building, but productizing generative AI. We can pre-train generative AI models from the ground up and maintain control over both data quality and lineage, create data sources and models from sources from months ago and understand when it was created, what data was used, who created it, things like that, just automatically. As we've seen, we can spin up a complete generative AI and LLM development environment, and product templates give us all the items needed for things like retrieval augmented generation or other scenarios with just a few clicks. Domino also gives you the ability to design your own model architecture to build natural language processing, computer vision, audio or multimodal models, and applications. As we've seen, you can also build an interactive web application using Domino's app serving and app publishing constructs, which support frameworks like Streamlit and Flask. And we can easily add custom parameters and guardrails to ensure a responsible deployment of our generative AI models, applications, and solutions. Thanks for your time today. And now as we wrap things up, I want to show you a short demo of the new integrated Jupyter AI coding assistant and some of the capabilities that it provides. Jupyter AI has both what we call magic commands in Python notebooks, but it also has a chatbot that can answer questions. It can generate notebooks. It can learn over your documents. So I'm going to flip over to a notebook here and just see. Say I have a notebook here that's somewhat documented, but somebody left before they could document it. And so scrolling down here, so I can see the train function here, and I need to document it and verify what it does. So I can click over here to Jupyter AI and say, what does this code do? And you can see it. I have to explicitly include the selection. Otherwise, Jupyter AI doesn't have access to that part of the notebook. So I'll click enter here, and it puts the code up here, sending it over to the model. And while we're waiting on that, you can see that it has access to not only OpenAI models, but also Cohere, Anthropic, Amazon Bedrock, AR21, SageMaker for both language and then different embedding models. And depending on what you're using, it will have you put in the key. And notice, okay, it's come back and it's told us exactly what's going on, defines a function named train, inputs, talks through it completely, talks about setting the gradients, all the things that it has in the code there. So the AI code assistant documents code for you. Really quickly, I'll go over here to this particular model, and here's an example of the magic Jupyter AI command there. And it says, this is the model and what we want it to do. And in this case, we want a program that asks me for my name and then greets me by my name in Polish. So let's go ahead and let the model complete there. And runnable code. So there it is. And then in this one, it's creating code as well. It's generating code that compute. It's generating code here. It's a function that computes the lowest common multiples of two integers and a function that runs 5 test cases of the lowest common multiple function. So I'll go ahead and let Jupyter AI create that and generate that code. And we'll run that. So it creates code. It documents code. It can look through and basically do retrieval augmented generation over different data files or documents and generate notebooks. So that's a little bit about Jupyter AI integration within Domino. We also have the ability to utilize GitHub Copilot as well in the Visual Studio Code version of the workspace. But that's for another time. Let's switch back to the slides and end the session. Here's a recap. We started with an introduction to generative AI, large language models, and prompts before diving into the structure and really trying to figure out the best practices around prompt engineering. We also looked at leveraging different training approaches such as few shot and chain of thought to really get back the most accurate output that we can from these models. We then moved into scaling things out with prompt reuse and templates, starting with automation techniques like prompt chaining, which allowed us to take the output of one prompt and use it as the input for another prompt. And so the templating, the chaining, the automation factor allows us to use tools like LangChain to be able to create solutions such as retrieval augmented generation that allows you to chat over your own data. And we saw an example of using Domino's AI Hub to quickly build that solution, along with others. And then we talked a little bit about the risks and challenges in prompt engineering. So let's wrap this up with some Q&A. Well, thanks for joining. I'm John Alexander, here for any questions that you might have. What are all the neural networks that most of the big LLMs are based on? They're based on transformers, and they're trained in a variety of methods. One is reinforcement learning with human feedback, which uses proximal PPO. And I hope that answers your question. See how Shashi interacted with the presenter? You can do that too, but time is running out. You are welcome. Very welcome. Okay. Any prompt temp websites that I recommend? There are a lot of prompt template websites out there, that you can utilize just to get started. I'll put some, I'm putting a resource guide together, uh, with some links and things like that, and so I'll share that, and, I'm not exactly sure how to get that, maybe in a blog post or something, but we'll get something out for you. But there are a lot of interesting sites out there that have, like, multiple, prompts for different applications, different expertise, different domains, things like that. And while they're very simple, it's usually a good, way to get started with that and play around. I highly recommend playing around with when you're developing your prompts. If you do it in something like a Chat GPT, it's usually cheaper than it is if you go through the API. And then if you want to productize or productionize, what you're doing with like a lang chain or one of the other toolings, you can do it that way. Of course. Thank you, Victor, for engaging. I really appreciate that, for you taking the time. Would you be able to showcase asking questions? I'm not sure I understand what that means. I've been trying to read them as I'm answering them. Is that what you mean? Would you be Oh, I didn't read the whole question. It was like, "Read more." Sorry about that, Jacob. Let me see. Would you be able to showcase if that is possible at all, asking questions regarding a mounted data set using natural language in Domino? Um, yeah, the example I showed was using, a pickle file with some embedded documents in it, and that was in the data drive itself. Um, I believe you could do that. I mean, using natural language in Domino, I did it with LangChain, and um, I haven't tried it with Jupyter AI yet, but I it's on my list of things to do, if that helps. Sorry, I didn't sorry I didn't read the question uh fully. Praising the model and boosting its confidence through explicit statements. Yes. If you noticed in I'm not sure if I actually pointed it out, but and that was from, I'm gonna totally destroy this name, but Aravamudan, um, asked if I've seen the chain of emotion, basically praising the model and boosting confidence through explicit statements. And one of the things I put in there with the let's think this through was make sure of your answer. So that helps with it. There are all sorts of approaches right now, and things are changing daily. I get a lot of benefit out of surfing LinkedIn, but I also get a lot of benefit from a Medium subscription, which is a site. It's got a lot of different blogs on it for data science type stuff and AI type stuff. Really good. And Jacob, if you're already a Domino customer, you can check out the the asking questions over QA prompt template, and there's also another one that works with the chatbot on a fine-tuned model within Domino. Those are two different Gen AI prompt templates that we have out there. Check that out. Can you explain the difference between, Shashi says, about training the model on real data and synthetic? Um, Well, it depends on the quality of your data to start with, right? That's where everything starts, and that's a big, that's a big thing with me is making sure that your data is in the right format. One of the things about retrieval augmented generation, before I answer that question, is a lot of people are like, "Ooh, I can take all my PDFs and throw them in a file or embed them, and they'll work great." Well, you got to make sure that you can leverage that data, that it's in a form that you can access. Does it have weird tables in it or something, something that's going to block you there? And synthetic data is becoming more and more accurate, it appears. Um, and it seems like from my experience and what I've been reading, synthetic data, depending on where you're obtaining it from, can be very useful. Any other questions? There are a couple of Hamadullah Hamadullah asks, I'm sorry if I messed her name up. Is there any prompt engineering tip or trick to assess if any hallucination exists that we can use as a follow-up? Um, there is a confidence score that was in um 3, 5, and before that you could use. You can also get the confidence. Basically, it's the same thing. Look up, what's the term? It's basically how confident it is in its answer, and you can track that. It's an API setting that you can track. If you're and I'm specifically talking about OpenAI, because that's typically what I've used in the past. So you can check that, and then if it's below a certain amount, it's below a threshold, you can flag that or say, start asking, critique your work, check think through this, all those sorts of things. You can. Um, th- I like the critique your work as a colleague. I use that a lot. Um, I also use if you don't know, ask. If you're not sure, say I don't know. And one of the things that you can also do if you're working with Chat GPT, there are some instructions that you can put in. And there are people out there right now that are basically creating these long instruction files. They're almost like, profiles that you'd use for like your shell or something like that. And you have those things in there so you don't have to repeat them all the time. But let me actually, while we still have like 2 minutes, let me look online and see if I can find that while we're doing this. Yeah, I there are several content creators depending on what you're wanting to do. One of the most interesting ones is a gentleman named Ethan Mollick. He does a lot with education, but he's always experimenting with large language models in really interesting ways. That's one. Let's see. Um, Man, well, let me look at LinkedIn real fast. The question was, uh, so Ethan Mollick is, how can I do this? I guess can I answer? I guess I can. Duh. Okay. I'm answering it. These are people that I follow, and it's my own personal uh, opinion, not the opinion of my employer. Let's see here. I'm typing as fast as I can. I know it's ending in like 12 minutes. That's two of them right there. Um, Thank you so much. Um, Appreciate it. Hope to see you online. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Twitter is John Alexander, John Alexander, just all one word. And thanks again for your time today. Take care.